All right, all right, all right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back to the Real Precious Network here on the Adoptee Foster Show. We have an adoptee panel tonight, and I'm excited. I am excited. I am excited. Guys, definitely hit the like button on your way in. Definitely hit that like button, subscribe, and you're in for a ride tonight because we have some adoptees on the panel. Some who have reached out, some who I have reached out to, and we have a returning guest. This is KJ. And so we're going to get the party started. But before we do that, definitely hit that like button, subscribe. I'm trying to find the right banner here. Again, thank you for coming to the Adoptee Foster, where we say the uncomfortable things out loud. Tonight, we are going to be talking about adoption reform. And before we get to that specific topic, I do want to introduce the panel. So we have Miss Jessica here to my left or my right. I'm not quite sure. You guys let me know in the chat. Jessica, how are you this evening? And let us know, I always say, let us know how you became an adoptee.
I'm doing good, thanks. I became an adoptee from the time I was born, so August 13, 1987, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And yeah, I'm still here.
Right now.
Still adopting.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for reaching out. You actually reached out to me and was like, where do I sign up? Pretty much. Like, girl, thank you. I'm so honored to have you here this evening. So we'll get more into your story. KJ, thank you so much for joining us again this evening. Give the audience, because we may have some new people watching, some new people that are going to come in. Give us a snippet of how you are and how did you become an adoptee?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Adoptee at 1.5 months old. Closed adoption out of Pennsylvania, Catholic Charities. And like Jessica, I'm still here, but I'm considerably older than she is. I won't give away the year of birth, but I'm over 50.
I'm not going there. Well, thank you again for joining us this evening, KJ. It's such a pleasure to have you. You know, I love your content. Your content is amazing. It resonates. And so everyone definitely go follow the adoptee.reset on Instagram. Jessica, do you have your social media page is
I believe I don't really hold on. It's Jess JESS _ Gardner GARDNER _
All right, go on ahead and if you can, guys, whenever you can, just put it in the chat.
Yes, I'm in the chat right now.
Miss Kristen, how are you this evening? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited. I'm glad to be here. You know, sharing these stories is really important. I am an adoptee. I was adopted at age 5 through a public adoption through Department of Social Services. And like KJ, I'm over 52. So, but I was in foster care from birth till I was adopted at age 5. So,
okay. Mr. Leon, there may be some that don't know you because I'm gonna do me too. Exit from this.
My name is Leona from Detroit, Michigan. I was in a closed adoption through Detroit, Michigan. Currently live in Maryland. I was adopted around 2 or 3, I think. I'm in the process of getting my paperwork. So once I get that, I will be able to, put that as a part of my story. My parents are, my dad is Black, my mom is white. So there's a lot of contention in that dynamic. So I'm, just trying to walk it until I can figure it out. And I want to say welcome everybody to the panel, and I hope we all have a great time.
All right. And I am Precious. That is my middle name. My first name is Michelle. I was actually adopted into a family where my mom name is Michelle, and so she gave me the middle name Precious, and that's how. I don't know if I've ever told that story before, but that's how Precious came about. I was adopted at the age of 8. I was turning 9, going into the 4th grade. I've lived in about 4 foster homes in a closed adoption, and I'm in Jersey. I lived in one part of Jersey, born there and raised in another part. And so, yeah, we're here on the Adoptee Foster Show. And now I am hosting a show with fellow adoptees who are not uncomfortable saying the uncomfortable things out loud. Thank you guys so much for your courage. And thank you again for joining this evening. So I want to, again, Jessica, thank you so much for this topic this evening, because when I'm telling you, Jessica was like, where do I sign up? This is what we're talking about. And so she gave a topic of adoption reform, and I thought that would be an awesome topic for tonight, just because, adoptees we're not always in the room when laws are made. We're not always in the room when people are talking about what should change with the system, what should change with foster children, adoptees. We're just not always in the room. And tonight we're all in the room. And so I definitely want to get into that more. However, before we get to that, I do want to ask everyone, Jessica, how did you find the Adoptee Foster? How did you come about the page?
I stumbled across it on Instagram as I don't know how it showed up. I think it might have been a story I've seen, and I went onto the YouTube and I saw that you did live shows, and I thought that was so interesting that, and with multiple people. I've only ever been on one where I've told bits of my story, but never one where I really get to talk to a bunch of other adoptees and see what they have to say and kind of piggyback off one another. So.
And yeah. KJ, how about for you?
I think Leon had something up that, and I had first had a connection with Leon, and he had something up about the show, and I responded through him. He reached out to you, and so found each other through Instagram.
Okay.
And the community on Instagram. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
Okay. And I found Kristen. I saw your content on Instagram, and definitely, I know I told you guys to share it in the chat. You guys shared it in the private chat. If you could just put it in the main chat whenever you get a chance. It doesn't have to be now.
Oh, I see.
I need to make moderators for this page. I don't know if I have. Do I have any moderators in the chat tonight? If not, I'm going to have to.
I think Menelik was a moderator, but he's not here yet.
He's not here. I'm gonna have to designate. I don't know. Is Coach Chelsea a moderator?
I'm not sure.
Maybe watching your channel, but definitely drop. I definitely want everyone to be able to follow you guys because you have awesome content. You are in the community, and okay, Coach Chelsea is here to the rescue. All right, girl.
So I met Precious. I actually found her on the Lapeef Network. She was on a panel, and I just started following her, and I didn't know that she was adopted and that she was doing adoption content. And so I was like, this is perfect. This is right up my alley, and we've been on the hip ever since.
Yeah, we've been hosting these shows. We started on Instagram first before I came back to YouTube. Because I had done YouTube, like you said, I was on panels of, other channels and just dabbling in the YouTube streets a little bit, and then I was like, you know what, let me, I'll just have my own show. I stopped the panels because it was more drama than I needed on a Thursday night, and I started my own thing. All right. So I just wanted to know how, everyone is finding the channel, because we ask people to we ask them to share, and they hear your stories, but we want it to, definitely go through the Instagram or the TikTok, the YouTube streams. And so again, you guys, whenever you can, definitely drop your channels so that everyone who's watching can follow you and go along for your journey too. I think everyone is still on the journey. Leon's currently on the journey. Kristen, you're doing great things with interviewing adoptees and telling your story. KJ, your content is amazing. And Jessica, you are doing the same thing. So I really appreciate you guys. All right. So adoption reform. Let me see something here. So we have adoption reform. What does it really mean? Centering the voices, rights, and lifelong well-being of adoptees while creating a more ethical, transparent, and accountable adoption system. So you guys read that again. Centering the voices, rights, and lifelong well-being of adoptees while creating a more ethical, transparent, and accountable adoption. And while that is a mouthful, what do you guys think about that definition of what adoption reform really means?
I think it's really good because I feel like right now and the way I was raised and the generation I was raised, there was so much around protecting those who were put in place to adopt us. And then when it came terms to us and our human rights and the things that we were brought into this able to have access to, there really was no protection for us or our lifelong well-being, which to me personally means having access and knowledge to who we are and where we come from to do as we please and be able to navigate that information so we can live alongside it, heal, process, and adapt to adoption, which is lifelong.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think, on top of that, like when you look at, it's almost, I hate to say it this way, but it almost like we're the criminals, you
Yeah.
know, like we don't have access to what we need to transform our identity because we always, we're starting off at a loss already, in life. And, you know, it's hard enough navigating out of that, and then, trying to get access to your information. That's like another headache, is information that you actually need to be able to, navigate your life and really, I think you should be able to connect with your family if they aren't, I think if they aren't a harm to you, right? Like if they aren't showing or, you know, there are some families who try to look for people, when they're adopted and they might be a harm to them, right? And so
Mhm.
I think the closed adoption, it has some value in that aspect, but also I think you should be able to reach out. Like if you had siblings or cousins or something, you should be able to reach out to somebody that's a part of your birth family so you can, curate that connection, you
Mhm.
know.
I definitely agree with that. I agree with that.
I mean, the foundation of who every human is from the start of their life, right, is where they come from, um, where that is, who those people are. So for adoptees to build their life with that foundation that is incredibly broken and is shattered, and for children, it's near and close adoptions, it's unattainable to reach. It really is. Especially if you're not having people help you put together those pieces.
Hmm.
So for us to be expected to form and normal, you know, I don't know.
It is very hard because especially in closed adoptions where you're not, some people are not told that they're adopted.
No.
So they
And
don't have a reason to look. They don't have suspicion until their inner selves, right? The part that's not adopted legally, right? Because
Hmm.
we were told by Julie, adoption, a trauma informed coach, that our emotions towards adoption is cellular. And I wholeheartedly believe that. When she said that, it was like, girl, you preaching, because it is cellular, right?
Mhm.
And so we are adopted. We have 1 years old, a couple months years old, 9 years old, 5 years old. We are adopted at different ages and stages in our lives. And so while we are adopted on the outside, the inside knows that something is not quite right, right? And so even with those who try to withhold information when you're not told that you are adopted, which should be a human right, like it is, in UN, it should be a human right for you to know that you were adopted.
The fact that you can legally adopt a child, but there's no legalities around you telling the child they're adopted, the fact there are just so many laws that need to be created that do not exist. Period. That is
They
one of
don't
them.
exist for us. They exist, but not for
Not for us.
Not for us, no. Not for
Yeah.
us.
True.
Yeah. My thoughts and everyone's ideas are similar to mine, is that my hope is that the future of adoption, because it hasn't been this, like from this moment I'm speaking prior, the future of adoption should not be built without the people who live its consequences. And
Absolutely
that's
not.
what we're all doing every single solitary day,
Yep.
not included. And we're the ones living it. So
Right.
I
Ultimately,
think,
the product
yeah,
of
I think, right, the voice, the things that I've seen in the past probably 5 or 10 years of people coming out, feeling more comfortable to speak, has been powerful, and it needs to continue.
I think it took me many years for me to realize that so much of what I struggled with, because when I was young and I've been in therapy since I was a kid, but they would say, "Oh, you're adopted. Like, how do you feel about that?" And I was just always, it was always just fed to. I don't want to say the word fed, but how grateful people were to have me. So therefore, no matter what and no matter how I felt, it was a good thing.
Oh, the grateful statement.
Grateful statements. When people would ask, I couldn't even tap into my own emotions. Like when I was alone by myself in my house, I knew the feeling of loneliness. I knew the feeling of void and the feeling of mystery and those types of feelings. But when you grow up in a closed infant adoption, that is my normal. So I didn't know how to decipher that this was pain. This was my body reacting, not just something that I had to process. Like it took many years for me to realize that so many reactions to the world and my feelings within myself and my safety within myself and within this world came from everything I just kind of buried as a child because I didn't want to upset anybody if I were to speak about it in the way that I do now, which can be potentially upsetting. I find.
Yeah. So there is a book. I always bring this up, and they'll probably get tired of me saying this, but it's a book that Precious brought up. It's called The Primal Wound.
Yes.
And if you haven't read it, I suggest that you read it, because it'll help you understand like the feelings that you're actually going through as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you read it, you look back and you're like, oh, that's why, I was doing this, or that's why I was pulling back, or that's why, when I had certain feelings, I was doing certain things, right? Like, so I was a daydreamer as a kid. I actually got in trouble in school because I would always be, my mind would just be somewhere else, not in class, and so that book really opened my eyes and really educated me about my, what I was going through. And so, and I think, when you realize all these, emotions that you're going through, or even like when you start to hear your story and certain things start to make sense. Like my sister was on here, and she was talking about how she has stomach problems too. And, have those same stomach problems, but I could never figure out why because I didn't know my medical history. I didn't know what was going on. So there are things that go on in your life that you're like, man, why is this happening? And then when they actually start to tell you the truth and tell you your story, you're like, okay, now, this makes sense now.
Mhm.
I wasn't, going crazy.
No, for sure. There were like reactions that I would have to certain things
Hmm.
in situations, even now.
Hmm.
And as a child, that when I look back, like I knew that I felt like they were extreme because I didn't see other kids reacting to the way I was to certain triggers. But, and it's mostly with like attachment related things, right? Like either I used to get super attached to people or I can leave people at the drop of the hat and know.
Mm.
And that's the part I struggle with now, where it's everybody. Um, it it sounds sociopathic, but everybody's disposable.
Mm,
Mm.
my God, on today.
I can relate to
Okay,
that.
Drop it like it's hot.
can relate to that. Hi, honest, open, and transparent. Okay.
But I have to work hard to not be like that. But that is in me all the
Mm,
Mm.
time, where I have to be fine and I have to be fine alone and I don't need anybody.
Mm.
But as a child, I was the opposite. Very, very attached, very clingy to not so much the home I was raised in, but external things that I don't know, gave me a lot of joy, whether it be friends or I have a vivid memory of this one day thinking I'm going to be picked up by my gymnastics coach and like me getting the wrong day and her not showing up and me waiting for hours, having panic attacks, crying, just at the thought. And this, I was like this in general, if I was not picked up on time or things like that, like, you know, the thought of like somebody leaving me or leaving me out.
yeah.
Mhm.
Now, and talk a little bit about, because when she said that part about feeling like you can either you're clingy to people or you say I can leave you at the drop of a dime, and
Yeah, I can.
relate to
I can.
that. Talk on that a
No,
little bit.
I can relate to the latter part. Always calling myself a loner,
Mhm.
and he said just like whatever, I don't need you. But also another statement that stuck out to me is growing up, and people making the statement, family is everything. And
Mm,
I remember like when I was young, I'm in 54 now, but I remember when I was young and I was like, what? Are they crazy? I don't care nothing about no family. Like, what do you mean family is everything? I don't even know who my family is. So that I never could understand that statement.
It, it's so weird because I never grew up in an environment where I ever felt number one, unloved, or never two, not supposed to be there, or like I was different. Nobody ever else made me feel that way.
mm,
Mhm.
And even in a situation like that, which is positive, it still did not fix the fact that I am different. I am inherently different. Um, I don't relate. But then when you talk about that, people can say, "Oh, well, I'm not adopted and I don't relate to my family either." So then I just am like, okay, I
yeah,
guess you're right.
it's a little bit different because we literally don't relate DNA wise. If it's not a kinship adoption, we really don't relate. We have to learn how to relate to them. To
Yeah,
Not to
Yeah.
them, that's not harsh, but
You
to
you are
who have
forced.
adopted us, right? We have to
right.
learn how to be in relationship with them because that's who chose to take care of us. And so we feel our obligation it should be a shared obligation, that we
Yeah.
have to learn how to be in relationship with one another because we don't share DNA, and those unspoken similarities are vanished from our reality. And so we literally have to learn how to talk to each other, how to make sure mannerisms around each other don't offend each other. Whereas if you're with a biological, let's just say sibling, or even a biological parent, if you've had that reunification, you don't have that layer of awkwardness,
Yeah.
that differentiates you. It's because there's relation there, that there's comfort there.
Right.
It's
And then
funny you say that because when I'm talking to my new cousin, Like it's like we just get each other, right? Like he'll say something, and you know how you'll say something, and like you met your sister, so you've met your sister, and you just have those little quirks that that vibe, right? Like so, it's so I can't explain it. It's so different, but it's so genuine and it's so real. It's like um I said this before. It's like you don't have to put on a mask to be
Mm.
a good person. You don't have to. You don't have to try to force it, right? Like it's just natural, and you know those are really things that you can't just be put in a situation that's forced.
Mm.
Yeah, it's an unspoken bond. Like it's just there.
Well, and in the terms of that too, like when I think back of being in a infant adoption and a closed adoption, and I think of myself as a child and how I evolved and adapted to that, and you think of the term, it reminds me of like a chameleon, right? Like when
Mm.
I learned how to mimic, and I learned how to copy, and I learned how to just be the best I can to what was around me. And
Hmm.
the older I got, and the more I became removed from that, or out of my parents' home and just out of the environments as much as I was when I was a kid, parts of those things started, and through my own life experience, started to kind of fall, right? And
Mm.
I couldn't never get them back because those parts of me were not natural. They were not who I actually was. It
Hmm.
was just trying to
You're adapting. You're
adapt,
adjusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're.
you know.
Yeah.
We
So
talked about that a couple lives ago. How much of your personality and who you are comes from your adoptive parents, and how much of it comes from your biological parents and their family? And I think
Yeah.
for a long time, a large part of our identity, again, depending on what age you are, and especially if you are adopted, from birth on, a large part of your identity is influenced by those who have adopted you.
Mhm.
And while whether that can be a good or a bad thing, the other side of that is that you do have an identity inside of you that you never really tap into until you know the truth about your adoption, until you know the truth about your biological, family. And I think that's why a lot of adoptive parents do not want to turn on that light of truth. They don't want to flip that switch because they know that the parts that they have instilled in you, they don't want to see those go away. They don't want to see you choose one
Mm.
over the other. And the reality is both parts make me who I am. And so, like that song, just take me as
right,
I am,
right.
or have nothing at all. Like that's the attitude that I have, because you have to be okay. And if you're not okay, I really encourage adoptive parents to seek therapy, because if you're not okay with the biological makeup of your adoptee and them tapping into that part of themselves,
Mhm.
then you have to ask yourself, or maybe ask a professional, why. Why do
Mhm.
you have an issue with the adoptee discovering who they biologically are, even after you
Mhm.
raised them, you've instilled good values in them, you
Mhm.
love them, you have nurtured them. Why is their truth a trigger?
And then you
Mm.
have the term that a lot of adoptees identify with as the blank slate baby, a baby to come into a situation to um, be blended as best
Yep.
as they can to another environment, which really, really rubs me a negative way. It really makes me unhappy because um, um, it then makes me want these people that want to adopt, and I understand there's many reasons to adopt, but if you're adopting a newborn infant, and then would you be willing to adopt them under circumstances in which there was some level of culture and family preservation or sibling preservation or open birth certificates or some aspects of that child's life that you did have to share? Would you still think about it in the same way versus getting a newborn baby and it's going to sound negative, but getting what you need out of that situation?
So I want to play this clip just because you said that. I don't have it in my deck, but I do have it. I was going to put it up, but because you said that, I want us all to watch this video. And Leon, you have seen it before because we covered it, I think, when we used to go live on. Long story short, this is, God bless you. This is a adoptive parent who comes to a realization about not preserving, like you said, Jessica, that biological connection or roots. And I thought this was very profound because you won't hear a lot of adoptive parents admit this. And, you know, we're talking about adoptive parents and the truth and the triggers. There are adoptive parents who are very supportive, who you know, that support their adoptees finding their biological family. And then there are some who don't. So, you know, I think those conversations need a blend of adoptive parents, where adoptive parents who, you know, have found it within themselves to be supportive. I think that they should talk to the adoptive parents who find it triggering. And I think that the conversation can definitely go far if everyone is honest. But I want to play this clip.
Regret is changing my children's, taking away their right to know what.
Hold on. Here we go, StreamYard. Work with me now. Not against me.
Decided their name.
All right, I'm going to start it from the beginning. Again, this is an adoptive mother who comes to this realization of stripping her adoptees of their biological first names.
Biggest regret is changing my children's, taking away their right to know what their mother decided their name would be. Especially in my mother's and in my children's case, their mother did not place them up for adoption. She lost them through addiction. My son was 10, so he always knew her. And I changed his name. He was 10, and we changed his name. My daughter was 2, and we changed her name to fit our purposes because we wanted all of our kids to have J names. And now that is the most shallow, self-serving. It makes me sick to my stomach that we did it. I'm so angry at myself for not knowing enough about adoption at the time I adopted them, to have given them that, to have held on to.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
So many when I think of my childhood too, just that phrase she used, to held on to. I would have given as a kid. I spoke to you prior, but like when it came to the information about myself and when I would ask certain questions, I only asked certain things when I was ready to have them. However, I would have done anything at any point in my life to have had a name, to have had a picture, to have had a letter. Something that just came from somebody tangible, because adopted in the way that I was almost makes you feel like you're not real, like who you like you almost feel not just mysterious, but not real, not knowing who and where you come from, and that being a mystery and not knowing if you'll ever find it is such it's a very bizarre place to be when you're a child.
It's mental and emotional anguish that you don't know what to do with.
Yeah, every single day that I can't think of a single day of my entire life that I have not thought about something related to adoption. And as a child, that was just wondering who I looked like, or if I had siblings, or just like the very nitty gritty. Not even so much wanting to meet these people. I wanted little things to hold on to that made me feel real.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add too that I resonated with that what you just shared, because she said by changing her children's names to what she wanted to be. It was self-serving. So
Right.
my thought process was, I think depending upon why an adoption occurred, like people have to remember, like, these may be children and infants, but at some point, this is a human being that has a whole identity that's going to become a person, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think there's this sense of ownership, like they own you. You're like a piece of property. It's like, but there's so much that comes with that. There's so many layers that come with that. But a lot of, like in my case, I was adopted by a couple because my adopted mother could not have children, and because she couldn't have children because she was sterilized as a Black girl at age 16. I was adopted, so she has her own trauma, and that initiated her need and want to be a mother, and that's spilled. I mean, that's spilled all over into my upbringing, and then to have lost my adoptive mother, and there's another loss. So now the only mother that I had decided to adopt me is now is gone. But I think there's this sense of, like we said when we opened up about this, I'm doing something, I'm choosing you, but there's this selfish part of that, and then, you being a vulnerable child or a vulnerable kid, you have no say so. So I think for me, I know one of the biggest things I keep reiterating, and I'll reiterate it when I'm having discussions and talking to people, is like, you do not get to tell my story. You don't get to tell me I can't ask questions. I'm big on that. Like, it doesn't matter. And I keep always saying, it doesn't matter if the story is ugly, pretty, good, bad, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's mine. It belongs to me. Like, I couldn't narrate the story, but at least, at least tell me who I am, and don't, you don't get the right to, tell me I can't ask questions. I think one of the most profound things that happened to me is that when I started asking questions, my mother was like, don't go down that road, my adoptive mother. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you're not right. You can't even relate. So you don't get, I had a big argument as an adult before my mom passed away, because it's like, you do not get to tell me I can't ask questions, point blank and period, because you know who your parents were, and again, I think sometimes people think that adoptees cannot handle the story, but you don't get to tell me what I can handle and what I can't handle.
Especially when they don't know the stories themselves. If you don't know the story yourself and you're trying to protect me from a story you don't know, what are you protecting?
Right.
Are you protecting yourself from what's going to come of this, something that you don't want to embark? Well, I'm sorry. Like, if you have a child in the system, you go through them on that journey with them. You don't go down that road. Or for me, it was when I did start asking questions when I was a kid. The only thing anybody would really tell me is the state that I was from, and I came on the plane with my baby blanket. So I had the hospital and I had my birthday, and that's it. And then I became 12 and I asked questions. When you're older, we'll tell you what we know. 16 comes around, we'll tell you. 18 comes around, no, we're not gonna, or I don't really know anything and it's gonna take a lot to figure it out. So I entered it myself, and then when I found all the things and went in reunification is when my mother's like, well, you can't go to Louisiana by yourself. I'm going to get on that plane with you, because you are inherently meeting strangers when you are meeting your birth family, So she did come with me in that way, but for me to realize the people who promised me that they would help me ultimately didn't want to, really shattered my relationship or my trust in everything I was ever told, everything I was known, my upbringing, everything. Because when you're an adopted child and you're going to ultimately want these things, you're waiting years.
Yeah. Can you imagine the anticipation, from, 10 to 15 and 18? It's like, can you imagine? And then just still not getting
No.
The answer is the emotional. What did I say? Emotional damage. Like it
is.
really is emotional damage because I can't even figure out about me. I can't figure
No.
out things about me. And I always say, and we played a clip of a woman who said, you know, it's okay for you to tell me that you know, as long as that's the truth. And I wholeheartedly agree with her when she said that. It's okay to tell the child that you adopted that you don't have any information and you don't. I mean, there's you got to have something unless they stole you.
Yeah.
Okay, you gotta have something, right? So you can't tell me you got nothing. So
Right.
unless they stole you, you know, it is okay to say, you know, I don't really have much information, but what I do have is X, Y, and Z. You
And
know,
if you do have that type of information, what does it hurt? I feel like if you have information, we can't get our birth certificates, put that information in a box, make it accessible for the child so they can see it, that it's tangible evidence, you know, that they can go peek at and whatnot. Because I ultimately did find a box 5 years after my reunification, hidden in my parents' closet.
Inspector Gadget.
Gators.
Yeah, Leon and I went out down that path.
That's right. But I also spent my whole childhood like rummaging my parents' basement looking for documents, like trying to find things in the middle of the night. And when I was 25, I found a box, and inside the box was a bunch of information as well as a baby picture. And I said to from when I was born, and I said to my mom, like, why didn't you ever give this to me? Why is it hidden? And why did you think I would not want it? And I said, this is the only evidence of my existence before I came here. And you hid it. So
Response.
she just thought, she said she thought it wouldn't matter, that it wasn't a big deal. And I said, what makes you think you have a shrine of me in your house? A shrine. And this is hidden.
Ooh, my God. What's today?
And I think for adoptees, it's like what that actually means, right? The bigger picture of that. We don't want this. We want this.
Yeah, and I think I was
Goes away.
telling you guys earlier before we started, the only picture that I remember seeing of me is in a newspaper article that the lady from the adoption agency actually found. So I've never seen any picture before that. So like as an infant up to that state. And so to piggyback off the video that we just seen, we talked about this before. And when I was adopted, my dad had requested, the only thing that he requested, you know, two things. He was like, make sure you put it in a good home and that my name was not changed. So I'm named after my father. And so, you know, that speaks volumes to the trust that the adoption agency had to place me with these people, because they knew that they wouldn't change my name. You know, and I think people who do that, I think they're self-serving, they're entitled, and they want to do what they want to do. They don't look at the circumstances down the line in the future, because they're not going to have to deal with that. Guess who's going to deal with that? You are. You're going to have to deal with all this information. And like you guys said, you know, we need to be able to deal with it, either good or bad, but like, don't change my name. Like, at least honor that. Like, if you can't do anything else, you know.
I'm going to get into a couple of these comments, and then we're going to get into, I have 4 questions to pretty much ask everyone. So when we come back to the questions, we're going to start with KJ, okay? All right. So we have, I don't even want
Janesta Coleman.
Janesta Coleman, 2754. Thank you so much. When you get 18 years old, can you find your biological parents? And the answer to that is yes. If you have the information, yes. If, you know, people are up front with you. If not, you would have to go through Ancestry or 23andMe to get that information. I know I talk about this a lot. I had a life book. So I was adopted. I think I was the oldest adopted on the panel. So I was 8 turning 9. So I had a life book when I got adopted. And so my mother's First name was in there. My dad's first name was in there, and just a little bit about who they were. Not even about who they were. It was the reason why I was adopted, pretty much. You know, they make it seem like that's who they are, but it was an explanation on why I was adopted. And so, you know, someone told me to put my biological last name on Facebook. I was in my early 20s and I did it. And the person who reached out to me was the only relative that I had a picture of who was in my life book. And I was like, oh my goodness, that in a picture. I was like 7 years old in a picture with her. I don't remember the actual moment in time. However, we were at like a McDonald's or a Burger King, and she was the daughter of the great aunt that we were placed in her home when my mother just couldn't get it together. She was addicted to drugs. She couldn't get it together. So our great aunt took us in before she passed away. Then we were placed in other foster homes. So long story short, I found out, those life books give you a little bit of information, but because you pretty much all of you were adopted so young, did you even have a life book? Was this something that that you received? I mean, your life really started in adoption.
I had a
don't
baby
recall.
blanket that came from the hospital.
I don't know.
So, right. So when you say when you get 18, can you find your biological parents? The hopeful answer is yes, if that's what you want. But the reality of that is there's a lot of searching that comes with that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's whether or not you sign up to these DNA sites and you get any hints at all.
Yes.
Or if you're an international adoptee, like a lot of that doesn't really pertain to you. And then if you're within the closed adoption and none of these other avenues work, like Ancestry DNA and whatever, then you're really at the hands of the courts and whether you can get them to open your identifying information, which is illegal in a lot of states up until some of it is 18, some of it is 24, some you can't get at all.
Yeah. Great points. You're absolutely right, because in some states they still haven't unsealed the adoption record.
Yes. I actually spent a year because I had only connected with my maternal side and no one knew anything about my paternal side. So I spent a year. There's in Maryland. I was adopted in Baltimore City, but there was organization within Department of Social Services that you could ask that would assist you with motioning the court to open your adoption file. But I did that, took a year only to find out that there was no father listed on my original birth certificate. So you're talking about I spent the whole year doing it. That was such a disappointment.
Right.
So
no father listed either.
Yeah. But I also wanted to just stop really quick and say, oh my God, this is just so healing, because like when you were talking about the pictures, I was like, oh my God, like there's somebody else like me. Like I only have 2 infant pictures of me that my foster mom, she had a whole album of me, but she only allowed me to take 2 infant photos. So I used to wonder why, like when I would go to people's houses, I'd be like, I want to see your photo albums. And I would sit in people's houses and just like, but I only had 2. Yeah, so.
Like I said, I would have taken anything that was mine, and that to me is mine. And do you know what I mean? And I was so that, like, I forget who brought up the topic or the words of, it being self-fulfilling. Is that, no, how do you say it? Self-serving, self-fulfilling. I never felt like that growing up until going through the adoption process to realize everything of my existence, none of it is on my terms.
Yes.
I am at the expense of everybody else around me to help me get where I need to be, and I can't, and therefore I'll do it for myself. And I did, but to realize that as a child or a young teenager, it is very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to say, just because you turn 18, that doesn't mean that you're ready, like,
True.
to look.
Mhm.
Because I, in my case, I can speak, 18, like, I hadn't lived enough life. I haven't, done enough things to understand, what I was actually going to be going through, and so I think you have to really be mature enough, you know, you're not going to be, everyone's not going to be real mature. I think I started searching when I was 24. Um, and I thought at that time, I was ready, and because that's an emotional roller coaster you're not ready for.
Mhm.
This
You
is
So
why
know, it's
this is why I tell adoptive parents, though, you know, adoption is heavy, right? It's something that is heavy. Like, we have no say in it. It's a very real subject, a very emotionally driven subject. And this is something that, because you talk, Leon, you talk about being ready, right? You may not be ready at 18. And this is why I encourage adoptive parents to tell their adoptees early and often, right? This should be a conversation that you are always having. So when that time does come, you have no fear. If you have a choice, if it's something that you decide to do, you have parents who are supporting you and letting you know, I know this is going to be hard for you. And I don't know, I can't imagine the journey that you're going through, but I'm here to support you.
hmm
Having that early and often ensures that you're ready, right? Because when I went to go see my biological mom, I got a nasty text message like, how could you? You're ungrateful. And I'm like, well, if this is how you feel about me seeing and or knowing who my biological family is, it says to me that you really have a negative picture of my biological family. And in turn, internally, it made me feel like you don't like a part of me.
Mm.
Like, there's a part of me that you don't like. And I can't do anything about that. I can't do anything about how I was brought into this world, right? Yet you get to benefit on that because you chose to adopt me. And so there's a lot of complexities in the emotions that happen and surround adoption, especially when we talk about adoptive parents sometimes doing it for that selfish reason, and
hmm
the adoptee not having any say and having to navigate these complex feelings and being honest about them. And when you're honest about them, like you said, Leon, it's almost like we're the crooks. Like, like we on trial, or our hands are behind our back and we're being arrested for doing something out of, the script of the adoption fairy tale that adoption agencies give you. And
hmm
they need to really prepare you for the real emotions that come from adoption, even if an adoptee is brought up in a loving family, because
Mhm.
that duality and that reality of who we are within our biological nature is going to be a thought for some, and that thought is going to turn into wanting to act upon that for others, and
hmm
acting upon that for others is going to turn into reunification, and
Mhm.
reunification may turn into relationships. And so now you're stuck in the middle of, oh my gosh, I know my adoptive side, and now I know my biological side, and
And
I
you're
just want
stuck in the
everything to
middle.
get along. However, you on that side of the camp, you on that side of the camp. I'm like, okay, which family reunion am I going to this year? Who am I going? And I don't want to feel bad for not going to one because the other, don't want to really be supportive in the process. We're in a tug of war so often that I know that you guys may agree, but when we get some alone time, it's like, oh my goodness, thank you, because I need time to sit with myself. I need time to
Mhm.
regulate my emotions that not many people understand.
hmm
They
Well,
don't understand it.
and I don't know if you guys have ever felt like this, but what you just said kind of reminds me of how I feel when I speak publicly, and I get the certain looks or the opinions of others. And instead of people, I feel hearing what I have to say, it's more so their defense is more so protecting the people who raised me,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know if it's because they watched them go through years of infertility and watching the life that they gave me versus what I'm actually saying. Like they take that, I feel like, as a threat to them when realistically nothing of what I say publicly my parents are unaware of. Everything I say on here, my parents know. Maybe not my entire extended family, but my parents are aware. They are very aware. If they see this, they say, "Oh yes, she says this all the time." We are very aware of this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, let's be honest. I don't really care what somebody else thinks.
No,
That
What
part.
my story,
no.
you know,
Certainly, if they're not going to educate and ask questions about it.
yeah. Like
Right.
if somebody, you know, adoption already has a preconceived notion that most kids that are adopted are bad and they troublemakers. But that's just really the story is already written. The script is already written. It's actually they're actually giving you the playbook of what the adoptive child has been through, and as the adoptive parent, it is their job to find out how they can alleviate that trauma from you. Like, I'm not saying that they're going to get rid of it all, but they should be reading, these playbooks or whatever. I can never remember the name of it, but they should be reading this and trying to figure out, okay, if you know you like hugs and kisses, guess what? I'm going to give you hugs and kisses, right? If you like to spend time outside, we're going to spend more time outside. Like
Yeah.
it's not, they make it more difficult than it really has to be.
It's not difficult. It's just out of their norm. Again,
Mhm.
it's out of their biological wheelhouse, right? You're out of their biological wheelhouse. So
Yeah.
let's just say if you have a laid back mom or dad, right? And you're this laid back kid, they're like, for sure, that's my child. Like they're laid back just like I am. They like you and your father, you and your biological father. You both were engineers. Don't even didn't even know that. Like you weren't raised with them. It's in your DNA. It's in your DNA, right? And so when I tell you adoptive parents, no matter what age they adopt you, whether it's birth, whether it's 3, 9, they literally have to start from scratch, right? And you're saying, well, why don't they go with the files and what the foster care or the adoption agency is telling me that their behavior is? Because they still think that you're a blank slate, even with those things that were already observed about you, that were already studied about you. And you would think that they would take that and say, okay, let's base it off of this. Let's give them a lot of hugs. Let's give them a lot of kisses. But when you are self-serving, you're not thinking about what you're supposed to be serving. You're thinking about yourself, right? And so you can't come outside of yourself to say, okay, who I am may just not work. The person that I've been for 30, 35 years, whatever age your adoptive parents adopted you, because there are some late discovery adoptees who were born later in life too, or they were adopted later in their adoptive parents' life. They are going to, they're not going to say, well, I've been this way for however many years. I'm not going to change now. They're not going to change. They're going to be when you have someone who is not like you in your biological nature, that requires you to be someone almost that you're not, because we have to be adoptees and assimilate to people that we're not like. We have to do that, right? And so sometimes that reciprocation is not given back to us to say, you know what? They could be acting out of their normal biological nature, and obviously so, because they're not around their biological family. And so I have to do some things on my part and come out of my biological nature to meet them halfway, because if not, where is the connection going to form?
Right. And
Mhm.
so much,
Connection has to form somewhere.
so much of this is done subconsciously, right? Like
Yes.
as a child, you are not cognizant until you're older and you look back and think of all the things that you did to adapt and to survive this environment. Not that this environment is inherently going to kill you, but to make it seem or force it to be natural.
Mhm.
Natural as it can be, anyway.
All right, so we're gonna get to this first question. I have 4, so we'll see if we get to all of them. We should. But I'm loving the conversation. If you guys are loving the conversation, definitely hit the like button. Share this video to those who are, adoptees, former foster, those who are thinking about being a foster parent or an adoptive parent, even those who are just willing to just learn more. Definitely share this video. You have adoptees on the panel who are giving their real, true, honest perspectives about their journeys.
Mhm.
All right, adoption reform question number 1. Let's see here. So, what changes in the adoption system would have made the biggest positive impact on your life as an adoptee? And I want KJ to go first because she's been pretty quiet. So, what changes in the adoption system would have made the biggest positive impact on your life as an adoptee?
That's a good question. I've been listening to everyone's stories, and honestly, I don't, even at my age, there's every day I learn something different, whether it's from someone online or someone like in a group like this. I guarantee you that my adopted parents had zero education from the agency that they went through for adoption about how to deal with it, even though I was a month and a half old. Like, there was no education for them. There was no one in their immediate families on either side that ever adopted a child. My brother was adopted first and I was adopted, but I don't believe that my parents had that education to treat me in any way different other than I was the child that they couldn't have. So I feel like I'm hoping that in today's world, that when there are adoptions happening, that there's an education for adopted parents who can better understand the psychological, the social, emotional growth of children and how that affects them. Because I think my silence for my entire life, and I think I had mentioned this last time that I was on the show, I mean, I would sit and watch shows about adoption and you can hear crickets. I think there was this fear to say anything different, not know what to say. And I never asked. My brother was slightly older. He never asked. He and I never discussed it either. So I didn't have any friends until I got to college. I didn't know anybody that was adopted. No, I never had a conversation with a single person until I went to college that somebody else could be adopted. I mean, I'm not even sure I ever thought that somebody else, I knew there would be, but I never had a conversation about it. And I think that my silence was because I was too young to know who to go to or who to talk to about it. And my parents were equally as, I don't want to say secretive. I just don't think that they knew what else to do. And I think that education is key. And I know that that's changed over the years. I've had people reach out to me on both platforms, TikTok and Instagram, and their adopted parents saying like they want to do better, what they appreciate, like perspectives from people about, signs and triggers and what to look for. And they want more for their children. Not to everyone, I'm sure, but there's a lot of people that sit silent. You folks know this on social media. They're just watchers and they're taking in everything that we're saying here. They're taking everything that you say online. So I'm hoping that changes. And I think that is critical outside of open records. You don't have to tell the details of who the mother's name was or the father's name, but give the medical history, give the non-identifying information. But that's also a fear, because if I could have figured all that without having the DNA yet, and I was able to with just unidentifying information, that's very frightful to people who want that secret to just lie a secret forever.
Mm-hmm.
Forever.
I would agree with the education. I think
Yeah.
a lot of adoptive and when we say, well, when I say education, I mean that you're choosing adoption, and so you should completely immerse yourself either with adoptee groups, with other adoptive
Right.
parents, because
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily know of anybody else. What am I trying to think in my family who's adopted? I don't think that there is anyone else, right? So no one in the adoptive parents family can educate, support in a way of, hey, ask me any questions. It's support of, oh, okay, well, when you guys are in town, come visit us, right? That's the closest of their support they can get. But education, meaning you have been so indulged in those communities that when you don't know how to have the conversations, you already got somebody on speed dial, or you already have someone in your address book that you can call and say, I'm having a rough time. And I know you said that if I had any issues, I could give you a call, and this is that time, right? So to me, education is not only just textbooks, education is also child psychologists, because like in Kristen's case, my mother couldn't have children. And so, now, and I'm not saying that you don't know how to deal with children. However, everybody else's kids is always better than your own, because, you can the back, right? And so when you're dealing with your own, you not only need patience, but you also need a child psychologist who knows that you will be adopting, who knows that, you were not able to have children of your own, who knows all the factors going into this, and how emotions or how emotion driven this topic of adoption, this very real situation of adoption is. They can go in and let you know what level the child will be on and how to get on their level, instead of always being here and saying, oh, well, you don't need to know, or why do I have to tell you that, or it's no, you need to, because no matter what age you adopt, you need to treat that child like they are a newborn. I was 8 turning 9, so my parents was like, oh, well, she could walk, she could talk, she could feed herself, she could and like, no, you need to treat me like I'm a baby. Wham wham boo boo. I like you know what I mean? Treat me like a baby. Give me all the hugs, give me the feels, give me those things, because at the end of the day, I don't know you and you don't know me. So, I do need you to hug me, to let me know that it's okay to hug you. But again, you need more than, you need a team. You know how they say that it takes a village? Well, with adoptees, it does take a village of people who are in that same community to actually assist and support you in the journey, because your adoptee are going to be around, people who are not adopted, but are they around people who are adopted? To not be able to meet somebody till you in college is like, what happened from the years of the time I was adopted all the way till I done got in the real world? Like, what was I kept in the house? Were they kept in the house? What was going on? So yeah, I really think that education is important, but choosing what you're choosing. If you're going to choose us, choose a community, so that you have a community, so it isn't so difficult. I'm sorry, Kristen, go ahead.
I like what it's so funny when KJ said that. The first person I ever met that was a peer was when I went to college as a freshman. And met another gentleman who was adopted. And it was like, wow, really? Somebody like me? The other thing too, like, it's so layered. Like, okay, so my mother couldn't have children who adopted me. And just like you, KJ, I have a younger brother that's not my biological brother that my parents adopted. He's 49, I'm 54, because I started my own podcast. We just talked about our adoption and the fact that we grew up in the same household with the same parents with 2 completely different experiences. We never it never occurred to us to talk about that we were adopted, but we did that. And another thing I wanted to share, which so I was married and I got divorced, and I have 2 daughters. So I have two of my own biological daughters. So I went through the whole biological process. So one thing that was interesting is that because my mom didn't have biological children, she really didn't know how to be a grandmother to infants because she did not have any. I was 5, and my brother was basically 3. So she never went through the baby pamper, changing diaper, rash. It's like, so I remember like leaving her.
Who did you, because I went through that same thing. Who did you have to lean on? There had to be other people that you had to lean on to figure out what's going on with your body, before you have the baby. And then when you in the delivery room, and then who did you learn?
I actually, when my first pregnancy, I actually had taken a class and took a pen and paper and studied a few women. Like, what do you go to? I was such a nerd with it. Like, but I couldn't talk to her. I was crazy. I took a pen and pad, studying. I think I spent a day with somebody who was pregnant. Like, I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. But it was just weird because it's like that mama bear was in me with my daughters. And I remember leaving my firstborn with my mother for the weekend, only to pick her up. And she had diaper rash. I said, "Oh, you will never watch my baby again." Because she didn't, and I couldn't even be upset because she had no experience with an infant.
You did not have that written down in your notepad, Kristen.
You should have gave her a note.
Yeah, I did not have that in your notepad.
You didn't tell me I had to put it on there every time.
But it's so layered. You don't really understand how layered and how impactful. Like, my mom didn't have infants. She didn't know nothing about it. I was walking and talking, So
I've talked about that experience too. Just going through the experience of pregnancy and not really being able to, turn to my mom and say, what is going on? Why am I feeling like this? What should I do? And even that, I don't know if my mom found it awkward. Maybe we should have a conversation about that one day, but I don't know if she found it awkward, but I did. I found it awkward, as a woman having a child and not being able to really having to, lean on people that were around me who went through the experience. But Kristen, you said something, and then we're gonna.
I was gonna say, but the other deeper thing with that is my mother. The circumstances behind why my mother could not have children was trauma.
Yeah.
And now me being her adopted daughter, coming to her telling her I'm pregnant, and I will never forget the look on her face. It wasn't like oh my God. It was more like, oh my God, like, because she couldn't have children.
Yeah.
And just to share a really transparent moment, because like I'm all about like vulnerability and transparency. So my mom got pregnant at 16, couldn't have children, was sterilized by a doctor, right? Mm-hmm. I get pregnant at 16. And my mother wanted me to have this baby at 16. My dad was like, "No, you're not having no baby." And he did not tell me why. And I shared this on my podcast. He did not tell me until I graduated from Howard University why he made me have an abortion. So I was forced to have an abortion at 16. And so he told me, "I made you have an abortion at age 16 because your mother, that was not going to be your baby. Your mother would have taken over that baby. That's why I made you have an abortion. You were going to school, you were getting an education. So you just never know, like,
the trauma goes deep.
It goes deep. She couldn't have children. She was sterilized. My parents married, and my dad was a pediatrician. My mother was a teacher. He attempted to, through his medical experience and education, to reverse the effects or figure out what he could do for his wife, my mother at the time, but could not reverse it. So, now she's living her trauma through now her daughter got pregnant at same age. Wow. And she does have the ability to have this child, and I want her to have this child. And my father was like, absolutely not. So,
wow.
So,
Thank you much for sharing that. Thank you.
Mhm. Yes.
All
So
right.
I want to piggyback on what you guys were saying about meeting somebody that was adopted.
Hmm.
I didn't meet anybody until I was adopted until I met Precious last year.
Crazy.
Wow.
Yes.
I
And
think.
so, and when I found out she was adopted, it was like, it was just like, you know, eye opening. It was refreshing. It's like I could text her and, we talk about a lot of things and, I'll tell her, about what's going on with my journey. She encourages me and, I think that's really what you need is somebody around you to encourage you and to, just be level headed with you and, because when you first find somebody how excited you are and you
Like,
want
give it time, Leon. Give it time. All
you just
right.
want the answers, but you can't really get them when you want them. And so, which I kind of knew that in a sense because I've kind of been through this before, so like when I was younger, but like as you get older, it's actually very imperative that once you find somebody, you have to act and you have to try to figure out where they are and you have to try to gain that communication with them because you don't know, when a person might pass away. That's unfortunate. The older you get, I think the less time you have really
Mhm.
because, anything and I don't want anything to happen, but that's just the reality of life. As we get older, people pass away. And you really want to try to make those connections. Like I met my parents when I was younger. I had no idea they would pass away within years of themselves.
Mhm.
So just that perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to add to answering the question earlier about what could they do different now. I think there should be free genetic testing. Like, why do
Mhm.
we have to buy these tests? And like I actually because menopausal. I actually met with a doctor that does hormone replacement, and a part of that is genetic testing. And I'm like, you
Mhm.
know what, I'm going to do that. But why do we have to pay for that? Like, I think that
That's
should be something that should be free.
Mhm.
I
Oh
agree.
yeah, getting back to that question. I think that there should be no such thing as closed adoption unless you're unless they feel like your parents are a threat. And I think you should have open communication with your family at least a few times a year, like a family reunion, like a few times a year, like you go and meet your family, you hang out with your siblings so you can build a relationship because as the older you get it's harder to build relationship with people because you all live different lives and like I think if you were in the same path of their life like you could actually build a better bond with people and not just try to okay I met you now let's now let's build this relationship hurry up let's do this
Right.
and it just don't work it just don't work that way like
No.
I think
But the
I
other
think
thing too, Leon, is that you got to think about people who give their children up who don't want to. There are people who don't want a relationship. They don't.
Right.
Depending on the trauma or
mhm,
of how the story behind giving the baby up for adoption. I mean, it's so I keep so if they don't want you to know that, oh, I gave this baby up because I don't want to have a relationship. I want that door shut. It's also a real possibility.
Mhm. I guess then in the realm where open adoptions are possible, then there needs to be laws that uphold them. Because right now there are no laws, right? It's a verbal contract that the adoptive family can end at any point.
Yep. Yep.
So
Mm.
Yep. There are a lot of open adoptions that end up closed, or one party does not uphold to the agreement, like this,
Mhm.
handshake agreement, and sometimes it is a written agreement. I don't know how notarized or real it is on that end legally, but a lot of times either the biological family is really aggressive. You may have cases where the biological family is trying to take the child back, or you have adoptive parents who are not honoring the schedule or the letters that are sent or the phone calls, whatever the agreement is, it's not always honored on both sides. So there's, again, like Kristen said, is layered. There's so many different dynamics that we as adoptees have to navigate. We don't have a choice, right? Or we navigate them and we become law-abiding citizens, or we become a part of the very large numbers of statistics of adoptees who are in the juvenile or jail system, or those who have mental issues, or those who are trying to harm themselves. It's like, and even those who are becoming law-abiding citizens, they may have been in one or two or three of those categories throughout their journey.
Yes. And I can chime in, and I will be somewhat vulnerable in this, but I grew up and I knew one adopted person. Like you had mentioned, KJ, a girl that my parents knew in her family, and I grew up with her. And thinking back, I never thought to ask her like how she feels about it. Like growing up with this girl and seeing her all the time, I never once asked her like, oh, like how is your experience, or how do you feel like this about this? But in terms of meeting more adoptees throughout my life, by 22, I was in institutions, I was in rehabs, and in these places is where I met so many adoptees. I think in one of my time spent institutionalized, I had met maybe 5 adoptees within a 4-month period in this place with a total of maybe 40 people. And the statistics for adoptees of the amount of us that exist in this world, it's not high. I think people think it's higher than it is, but it's not. We are 2%. We are a slim population. So for me to find that many in one setting in a 4-month period just goes to show you. And some people, my parents used to phrase it as like, I just have bad genetics. Well, we can't just all have really crappy genetics, right? Some of this is, like I said, I didn't know how much my adoption affected me until I just exploded one day, like with everything in my life, right? I was doing drugs. I didn't know why I was doing drugs. I was sad. I didn't know why I was sad. I had no reason why. I had no understanding of anything until I was forced to go into the school. I asked to go to a rehab, and I went in, and they're like, "Oh, you're adopted." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm fine." And they're like, "Well,
no, you're not."
That's all any therapist.
That's why you're here.
Any therapist I'd ever been to prior to that would say, "Oh, I see you're an adoptee. How do you feel about that?" I feel fine, because when I was a kid, I would just introduce myself as, "My name is Jessica Gardner. I'm adopted." Like to near everybody, like I meet. That's how I introduced and I was proud. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, I don't know why. Everybody had a birth story, and that was mine, and that was all I knew. So
where's Julie? She literally just said,
Ticking time bomb.
Yes, when she was on here, Julie, hey Julie. She said, I asked her, what do you want adoptive parents to know about the adoptee experience? And
right.
I put this and put it on the channel.
Now I'm almost 40. Yes,
that
now
they are a ticking time bomb, and you just exploded one day.
Yeah, I exploded completely, absolutely lost my mind, and I had such an issue with like self-love and acceptance, and my whole life I was just trying to mimic, like I said, and be as other people, and I couldn't love myself for what I was, or whatever I was. Always felt like it was a problem, even if nobody else made me feel like that. It was like this internal strife that I had that caused addiction, severe depression, and here I am in these institutions, and here are all these adoptees dealing with the same thing. And that in those places is where I first started talking to, not the therapists about it, but when other adoptees would say things and I knew exactly how they felt. And I would have realized like, oh my God, and this, you just start to real. And by this point, I was already in reunification, and but 40 years now, I'm almost 40, and I'm long since out of these. But now I don't have to say, "Oh, I'm Jessica, I'm adopted." I can say, "I'm Jessica. I'm proud to be Cajun. I'm proud to be from Louisiana. I'm proud to have 6 sisters. I'm proud to know who I am, where I come from, in every sense of the world, how I was raised, what I found, everything." You know what I mean?
You can embrace it all. You can embrace it all.
Yeah.
Just one part of your story. And that's all we truly want. We want to embrace our entire story without feeling villainized for it,
Well,
we're going to get to the second question.
Yes.
We're going to get into the second question, and probably what you're going to say may tie into this.
Yeah.
How can we better censor the voices, needs, and experience of adoptees in adoption reform efforts? How can we better censor the voices, needs, and experience of adoptees in adoption reform efforts? And I think we talked about it a little earlier about, our voices should definitely be a part of when they are deciding to change laws or deciding not to change laws. We should I know, Kristen, when you and I talked, you had let me know that you had went to an adoption conference.
Yeah, they had on Capitol Hill annually, they have the Adoption Advocacy Day, where you can actually sign up and go and actually meet with senators and different representatives on the Hill, and then that's followed by a convention. So I went. It was eye-opening. It was eye-opening more to observe. I think when I went to the convention, it was a little uncomfortable for me because I didn't see a lot of Blacks in attendance. So, and then the different people, to me, it gave me more of a private adoption, international adoption feel, as opposed to like somebody like me who was adopted through Department of Social Services. I just didn't see enough diversity. That was just my opinion. But of course, that was my first time going. I have a lot to learn, yeah. But that does exist. I think that's good. That's a start.
Right. So yeah. I was telling you when we spoke, I didn't even know that this happens. I didn't.
Yeah, that's my first time hearing about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, it'd be great if, there's some adoption database or, something. And of course, information is free. So we also have to seek and find as well. However, there is no information that is given to us, or even our adoptive parents, right? Like, why aren't adoptive parents at these type of conferences or engagements where we are talking about the thing that you chose for your life and that you will be on this ongoing journey? Why aren't facilitated within, or why aren't they required? And not necessarily what you went to, Kristen, but even the adoption content creators that I see, they're having these meetups, they're having workshops and things of that nature. That wasn't even something that was presented when we were growing up. Okay, let's go to an adoptee workshop. Adoptee parents, you guys go in this room. Adoptees, you go in this room. We go to summer camp, we go to vacation Bible school, we go to basketball camp. We done gone to all these camps, family vacation, but we don't go anywhere that our voices are literally the center of the actual events or the engagement, right? Everyone just said here that you didn't meet anyone that was adopted. Leon, it wasn't until you met me. College, Kristen college, I knew some people who were adopted in, I believe I was middle school at that time. But we didn't talk about it. I think I probably overheard them say it, but we never talked about it. So, our voices are they were never really taken into consideration in the first place. And so that's why you have a lot of adoptees who come out a lot later, because it's like, okay, I'm coming out of the fog. I've, like Jessica, been in reunification, but there's still some things going on with me that I need to figure out, and I need to, come to myself and find myself. And so, you know, a lot of adoptees may not even know how to answer that question because for so long they didn't have a voice. They couldn't find their voice. They don't have the language. And so I think, you know, definitely having that be something that is encouraged for adoptive parents to embrace on that journey with their adoptees, I think would allow more people to hear adoptees and their voices and how we can reform this system that we are in. Because it honestly started off of deceit. It started off of money. It started off of lying. It started off of secrecy. Georgia Tan really changed the narrative for adoption.
Yes.
You make it okay to change birth certificates and tell mothers that you're going to nurse their babies or take care of their babies while they're, you know, resting from being so tired from giving birth. And then you lie to them and then you actually take them from it. Like it's rooted in trauma. And so you can't continue a system rooted in trauma, but then say you have the well-being of the child in mind. And that may be you know, a theory that you have the well-being of the child in mind. But I do want to play a video of a man who is talking to a content creator. She goes by Lala on TikTok, but he's talking to her and he's asking her, like, how is adoption unethical? Like, what do you mean it's unethical? And we're going to get into this. And then we'll get into the third question because we're about 1.5 hours, and I told you guys about 2 hours. So we'll get to the the third question after this video.
Actively wrong.
Here we go, StreamYard. There we go.
For-profit market economy. So we are.
All right, let's start it from the beginning so you guys can hear what he says.
How does that make it objectively wrong?
It's a for-profit market economy. So we are buying and selling children in a for-profit market economy. That reduces a child to a product and an adoptive parent to a consumer. And
You know what makes that objectively wrong?
Excuse me?
Hey, how does that make it objectively wrong?
Incentivizes profit over child welfare. The whole point of the United States of America having a nonprofit sector is for charities, for the well-being of some good cause that needs the cause over the profit. So the financial structure of a nonprofit incentivizes completion of a mission statement. In this case, it would be find children safe external care. Give children safe and loving families. That's the mission. Any surplus income that nonprofit makes has to go back into the mission. Now let's look at a for-profit. Okay? In a for-profit, there's no mission statement because the mission is to make profit. Is to make money. That is then prioritized over the well-being of children. And we can see how that has ended up, right? We can see that there's not good vetting in that society. There's not a good due diligence process because there's no federal regulation for one. So without one, they're doing what for-profit companies are built and intended to do, prioritize profit over anything else, even when that's with the child welfare. Whereas a nonprofit, even though they're completing the process of adoption, which strips adoptees of basic human rights according to the birth certificate, we can get on that another time. But even though they're still doing that, they are much more incentivized to prioritize the child over money. That incentivizes making sure the child is with a safe, loving family. That incentivizes due diligence over profit.
Oh,
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I wanted to for clarity. Yeah, I wanted to play that for clarity because she broke it down so perfectly, and I was like,
Oh my God.
I don't know if I would be able to say it the way she said it. However, you know, when you are a for-profit program, you're doing it for profit. Like she said, you don't need a mission statement. Your mission is to profit. And we talk about this all the time of, you know, is reunification really the goal when your state gets money for children to pass from, you know, foster care to foster care to foster care to, you know, being adopted? When you're passed from foster care to foster care, the state gets money for that. And so they know that, you know, they that's their goal, even though they tell us that reunification is the goal. If reunification was the goal, I think more of us probably would have got adopted or not adopted, but been in kinship adoption, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have to really, think about that. And to her point, her name is Lala on TikTok. If you want to follow her, she has a lot of adoption content. I think it's older, but it's still on point. To her point, now there's adoption reform going on in Utah right now. And Utah was known as the Wild Wild West for adoption because women from all over would come to Utah and know that they could, give their child up or place their child for adoption. And it was almost like no questions asked. Just
Yes.
Utah just changed their laws from making adoption a for-profit program to a nonprofit program.
Mhm.
So now I'm thinking, okay, so you change the quote unquote mission, but does that really matter when you've been doing what you've been doing for such a long time? Or are you now saying, okay, well, our mission is not, the money anymore. It's having a mission. And what exactly is that mission after you've been known as the Wild Wild West of adoption, And I don't want to, I want to commend them for taking a step. But if you're a state that's already known as a Wild Wild West for adoption, you're going to have to do a little more than that for others to really believe that you've changed the way that you view adoption. Because Lala gave it to us straight. You can either be a for-profit or you could be a nonprofit. And I think a lot more adoption agencies, mark my word, will probably turn their agencies into nonprofits instead of for-profits because more adoptees are speaking up about adoption.
And as a supply already does not meet the demand. So in a lot of situations here, like if it was not a for-profit industry, it may completely
dismantle. Yep. It'll dismantle.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that honestly that disturbed me when I was on the Hill at the convention, because it was like they literally had vendors out selling books. They had a vendor who was talking about international adoptions, and then they had like this brochure of different countries you could adopt kids from, but it was all for profit. And I'm telling you, it literally, I left because I was like, I can't, I gotta go. Because it literally gave me remnants of like, and I hate to say this, but it gave me like Epstein.
It is.
It's transactional.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
No, exactly. I was like, gotta go. Because it was like, it's just no way, especially like I'm born and raised in Baltimore. And being adopted through the Department of Social Services. And then also I actually work with people with mental health and substance abuse. You can go online and look kids who stay in the system. There are plenty of children to adopt, that may have a lot of issues and problems, but it just kind of threw me off because I'm thinking, I'm on the Hill, it's about adoption advocacy, but then I go to the convention, I'm like, all that they're talking about, like, it's more like you said, transactional and money. And then it was not diverse at all. Like it was only like four blacks that were in the whole, I'm like, are you serious? Like where's the diversity in I'm not talking about, I mean diverse. Like it was predominantly Caucasian. Like where are other ethnicities?
Well,
right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I have read that, as far as like pricing goes, that it's different for race, for international, for age, they're that, and I don't think the agency is like listed anymore. Like there used to be like a list within the agencies that list them, like for a white girl being at the highest, and then So let's say if you're paying upwards of 70 grand, right? You are paying for a product. You're paying for a product, and you're paying for a goddamn experience.
Yep.
And what happens when all of that folds? When those products and experiences find their family, find their siblings, go into reunification, they ultimately are not all going to have the support they need because of the incentives and intentions of how they were retrieved.
Oof. Mm.
Yeah, and I think the reason the Utah is changing the law is there's actually a documentary on
Oh, the
them.
baby broker.
Yes,
Yes.
called.
Wow.
So basically, what's happening? People were doing. They call it adoption tourism,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be flying to Utah. You know, they would either have babies or they would go look to buy babies.
Mm-hmm.
This actually happens in a lot of states, but Utah is one of the biggest
Yeah.
that this is happening. Um, and like you said, you know, they're speaking out. You have more people speaking out now. You have people who have platforms, you know, like this and others where you're actually um, educating people on how adoption actually started, you know, and, you know, Georgia Tan was one of the worst people in society, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because she started all of this.
Yes, and if people understood the workings of Georgia Tan and the amount of what she created that still exists
Mhm.
in adoption today, it's completely and that all exists. I feel because of commodity, because that still exists.
Yep. Yep.
It's, and you know what? I'm just gonna say it. To me, that's remnants of like slavery and selling people and buying babies. Like I just
Yes.
like this.
I always
Yeah.
was raised thinking when I used to ask about how it worked, and my parents would always say, "Oh, agencies, this, that." Okay, I understand agencies help people, to find babies and help the birth parents and all that. Until I grew up and got older, and I asked more questions and found out I wasn't from any agency; that I was from an ad.
Oh,
An ad like in the newspaper.
Wow.
If you Google that, and this is in the 80s, but if you Google that type of stuff today, it's considered black market baby peddling. And I'll be vulnerable again, but I was raised in a home where my mom is an LCSW who primarily focused on at the time family adoptions. So I thought when I need to find my information and who and where I come from, my mom's especially
easy, right?
she can help me, but I didn't understand that she's working for them, not people like me.
Ooh.
So it is.
There's so much of that hidden and embedded in
Right.
the country, let alone the world right now, that
Mm.
it's like this, it's like a snake.
No, and if I speak out about it, it's nobody says this, but I know that's how people feel. Why can't you just? No, people do say this. I literally had someone say this like a few weeks ago. Why can't you just be grateful? Why just can't you? Why do you keep hurting people? Even the night before our wedding, I had a drunk member of my family say to me and my husband, "Thank God she was not raised in the bayou. Thank God she was raised with her family. God knows what she would have been without this situation." And it's like, because I speak about these things publicly, people then sometimes give it back. But the way they give it back makes me realize that what I have to say, I have to keep on saying it. It doesn't, because of this, because I feel like this is the norm. This is what we get. You have privilege. You wouldn't have had this life. You should just be grateful. And any other things that you feel, you should keep it to yourself.
So you were adopted by a licensed social worker.
Yeah.
Who, when you would ask questions, would keep giving you one deadline after the next, like breadcrumbing to ultimately take away all the crumbs and not really give you the answers. That has to be. We're gonna move on to question 3.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that had to be tormenting. Like that's why I had these panels.
I did want to add something.
You never
though.
know what each adoptee experiences in their adoption journey. Like our stories are similar, but they're so different. And LSW, and you're having difficulties with going through your origin stories and your biological like questions, and you have to search. It's like
they'd give the information that they wanted without giving me enough to find, but ultimately I found enough without having enough, just because I was ruthless. I stayed up all night searching, finding things. Like I was studying demographics at the time of the Fashion Institute of Technology, and I took my baby blanket, the name of the hospital, my birthday. By that point, I believe I maybe had a last name, and I had a gut intuition that I had an older sibling, and I had a gut intuition that she would have been a couple years older, while always being told that I had no siblings. I used that information. I plugged it into the internet, created a MySpace, wrote out everything I knew about myself, my birthday, and where I'm from. And I mass messaged 2,000 people within the 35-mile radius of Baton Rouge Women's Hospital. And in 2 weeks later, I get hit. I know you're.
Hey, she was bouty.
She was ruthless.
And I go, and I take my laptop, I show it to my mother, and she goes, "This is them." I never needed DNA testing, at the time. And I'm one of 6 girls, only one relinquished.
ooh.
So when you ask the question of what would have benefited me, it's not only to know who I was or where I came from, but to honor sibling preservation, even if that meant a letter, even if it meant photos, even if it meant a yearly visit or something like that, instead of ripping children away from the things that exist, that are real, that are theirs. Those are, you know what I mean? Those are nobody else's.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to add. So there's actually an adoptee that was behind the Canales law in Baltimore. So he was actually he was in the foster care system, and he was the one that was actually pushing for this law, like for a long time. So I don't know if you guys remember the story, but the girl, she passed away because they had left her like in a hotel, and then like people
they were supposed to be watching her.
Yeah, they have contractors that's supposed to come and watch her, and she, basically, is no longer here. But what I'm saying is, he was the one driving and pushing for that to be a law, and that's what we need across the country is people who have been in the system or know about the system to actually be able to impact change.
And I believe they're moving towards that, because I mentor with someone who's in this field, and she, she's looking to bring me into some things going on, but she said they're looking for more people who have the experience. They're looking for adoptees who have, gone through the adoptee experience, or parents who have adopted before, to voice what either the concerns are, the difficulties, or roadblocks. So I'm looking to work more with her as as into the new year, because I think that that's good that they want to hear from those who have been in the actual experience, as opposed to those who just want to buy into the experience per se.
Right. Ultimately, this is a system that is needed.
Yeah.
Right? Nope. I haven't met an adoptee that said this should be completely abolished and is not needed and not necessary. Of course it's necessary, because not everybody can remain. Okay. And
if they can make social media a course in college now, they can make adoption and family services and childcare a course in college. Like why not? Why can't it be some type of course study? Because we go to school for 4 years to be able to to finance our lives off of the education that we have in this area of study, right? It's supposed to make us money. Right. And I'm not saying that adopted children should be making adoptive parents money, but what I'm saying is, if you want true connection, then you will educate yourself on, again, those child psychiatrists who are very knowledgeable on how to get on a child's level in the midst of the emotional hardships that they're going through. Why not get that type of education? It was beneficial for me, going through college and having all those child-centered courses. It helped me realize I was in the fog and then get out of the fog.
Yeah. The first time I realized I was in the fog is when I had another adoptee who now speaks very publicly about adoption. Say to me maybe like 10 years ago, she's like, so do you still feel the same way as you did? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still fine, because you go through things and you process it. And I had gone through things and I processed it. And then, as more and more came about and the more I learned and the more I learned with my own story, I suddenly said, oh, pause. No. How about rewrite adoption and take the things and aspects of adoption that are traumatic, that can be preventable, like the stealing of birth certificates, like the secrecy or the coercion aspects, or siblings being separated and having no contact, or anything that involves hiding, in my opinion.
Should be abolished.
It is.
Hiding is dishonorable.
It's just yes.
Dishonorable. Yes. It's a dishonorable act, and that's. I don't know if I'm articulating it good enough, but it's like, again, like not knowing is one thing, and then not knowing and then being lied to is deception and dishonorable. But like, even if you find out the negative, that something good can come out of that.
Yes.
Right, but deception and being dishonorable, like for me, I found out, like, I had been lied to my whole life about how my mother, they didn't know that I existed, just all kind of lies. And this is like, 20 years after reconnecting with my maternal side. It's just like, I'm spending time with y'all and y'all lying. So I'm just saying, like, pain is pain. We all go through life and have pain, but being able to process it in a healthy way. How can you begin to process being deceived and lied to? Like and then people want to decide how we process our pain. It's not for you to decide. It's not.
No.
It's nothing. Yeah.
And a child, I feel, can understand relinquishment. They can't understand lying and masking and hiding things. It was always explained to me why I was giving up, and that makes perfect sense. Not end of story, but of course I understand. But the other aspects of it, I don't understand.
Yeah.
They're completely unnecessary.
So I want to, I did put a link because for some reason I can't participate in the public comments.
No, and I meant to. I'm sorry. I'm so enthralled in the conversation. There's two chats. So there's a private chat just for us, and then there's another where it says comments, where that's where everyone who is
my goodness
engaged. And I'm so sorry.
They wanted me to connect to my YouTube, and for some reason I couldn't. But
that's what I was going to say.
Highlight you guys take a look at the adoptioncouncil.org.
Leon, is there any way you could copy and paste it? I'm sorry, Kristen. Is there any way you could copy and paste it from the back chat into the? My mouse is acting crazy. When I tell you, it had the thing was, it was just. I'm like, how I turn this off?
Yeah, I got you. I got
you. We're wondering if that's there's organizations out there. There is adoptioncouncil.org. That's how I learned about the Adoption Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill. So I just wanted to share that resource.
Yeah, no, those I have found like one of the hardest things as far as sharing, because really all I've done is share on podcasts when I can and share on my own social media page, because when I type in like, where do you go with the experience that I have and how do you make a change? It is hard to find, like, who do you speak to? It's hard to get appointments with legislative. But yeah, it's nice to know they have these things that you can go to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there should be also an organization called CASA, CASA, that should be in every state, where you can actually become almost like a adoptee mentor. to someone in the system. And I believe it's when they're in foster care, I believe the connection actually is supposed to, end once the child is adopted. But I think that if you become a mentor to an adoptee, that should be a lifelong connection, considering our, history with either foster care and adoption. But it's a way that you can get involved without necessarily, being a social worker. There's so many people who I have siblings myself. I'm one of 7, the oldest of 7. And so, I have 2 siblings that are like, oh, I want to be a social worker and I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, it's not what you think. You've been through the system. And so you want to change the system because of what you've been. But that would be a 9-to-5 job and you would be working for them. And they would tell you that you can't really make an impact here because this case needs more work. And I'm not saying that those who work that 9-to-5 don't make an impact. I'm just saying that you got to push the paper. Okay. You are the paper pusher. You are the person who are moving those cases along, and the attachment that you are looking to have being a social worker may not be the avenue for you to make the difference that you think you want to make in that field. So yeah, there definitely are different avenues where you can make a difference. It's just, again, we have to go out and seek and find these things. And as adoptees, you would think that they would be readily, available to us because of our history, All right, I'm going to get into the third question here. Let me see.
And you said that was KASA, is that right?
KASA,
okay.
Like, what is that? Home in Spanish, casa, CASA.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Alrighty.
Casa su casa.
Yes, there you go. All right, so we have the third question, which is, what does, and I think we pretty much answered this, but what does ethical adoption look like to you, and what practices should be ended immediately, like today?
I would say like the first step would be the sealing of birth certificates.
Yeah, and even changing them, changing them too.
Right, you can have 2. Why can't you have 2 birth certificates?
Right.
Yeah, why do you have to change the information per se? Like, why can't, even if your adoptive family wanted to change your name, why can't the original birth certificate still act as a legal document for you? Why does it have to be? I don't know if I've ever seen my original.
Yeah, why does it take the act of the National Guard to get my closed records?
That part. Why do we, like Tristan said, why do we have to pay all this money to find out who we are? Right?
Yeah.
Like, this needs to change.
And then the whole name changing it and the impacts to identity. Like, I remember, like, oh my God, I was born Krista Marie Davis. That's my birth name. But I was adopted as Krista Marie Bryant. And then my mother's birth name was maiden name. It's like, you got to go through all of that. And then not knowing who my father is, but then trying to connect on ancestry through my birth mother's maiden name. Like, it's just too much.
Right. It's like, even if I had, like, when I was born, could have been given a picture of each of my parents, maybe my first picture of my father when I was 30 years old didn't have to be a mugshot on the internet.
Whoa.
Right.
No, I think that there's a lot of things that could start. One is the record shouldn't be sealed. That's like your identity. And if they're going to change your name, why can't you have 2? Why can't you have your original, and why can't you have the one that they changed your name? Because typically, most adoptions, they will change your last name. Like, but I think the parents really go above and beyond when they want to change your first name.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be able to do that. That's one thing they shouldn't be able to do.
And then there's the talk of whether or not people adopted would prefer term of like legal guardianship before they can consent, and I don't know how. I don't know if I have an opinion one way or the I don't know. I don't know what my opinion is on it.
But you know what? It could be like in my case with my brother and I, they just added. We didn't change our names, but they added my adopted last name and kept our birth name as a middle name. You know what I mean? And then explain that, because then that's like you don't lose that part of your identity completely. And especially,
I'm one of 7, and there's nowhere in this world that puts me and my 6 siblings as siblings. We're as long as the world is concerned, me and my brother who got adopted together, we're brother and sister, and the rest of my siblings don't even exist as being my siblings.
Yes, people can talk very briefly on that, but like when it came to like planning our wedding and realizing that I never thought that this would be a topic of conversation or something that would even happen, where my adoptive parents, even after almost 20 years of being in reunification, was uncomfortable inviting my biological family. And whether or not they were able to afford to come wasn't the issue. And of course, I would have been fine with whatever they chose, with what's best for them. But the fact that that side of me, after everything, could not be acknowledged as important enough for them to just put their emotions aside. And all I heard from that when I said how much, it upset me was, well, how do you think that's going to make the rest of your family feel? And all I can think of was, you can
not the rest of my family.
You can invite your friends and all my friends, and I've known my sisters now 20 years, and still, I will forever for my life be in the middle of this.
God, we tired of being the strongest soldiers. Okay, we need a vacation.
And like, you can't sit there and tell me that's what's best for the child. That reiterates that's what's best for you and the narrative you want in the situation you're comfortable with, and none of that pertains to me.
Oh, yeah, it is very selfish and
unconsciously selfishness.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's the story of many adoptees. I think a lot of adoptees in reunification would probably have, I don't know, I can't speak for anybody, but I'm sure it's common.
Stuck in the middle. You're stuck in the middle.
Stuck in the middle.
And you didn't ask to be there, but you're the one getting all the horrible looks when you talk about being in the middle, man. You're getting all the weird remarks and the whys and how
side eyes.
You should be grateful comments, and because of the duality of our situations, nobody ever said we weren't grateful, but
nobody ever said it. And frankly, anybody raised around me knows the privilege I did have that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I don't need to speak on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then not even having a choice. You expect me to have this attitude of gratefulness. I had no say so in the decisions that someone else made about my life.
And then you can't sit there and do all that and then expect the product of the system, the children of this system, to come back and sit there and respect you the way you want to be respected. Because if you don't respect them and their journey with it, it's not going to come back.
And then even in your situation, something as monumental as marriage, where you are literally there to connect two families to become one, right? Because I correlate adoption with marriage, almost like an arranged marriage where you have no say, right? You have no say. Your families are choosing families for you, and you just have to be okay with it. But you're at, Jessica, you're getting married, and then you have to. It's literally this center or the trauma of your adoption. And I don't know your full story, but that has to be traumatic, of being in the middle all the time and not even, having the space to be able to express yourself. But you're at a wedding and you're connecting families, and you have your family that says, why would you invite them? What would our family think? And it's literally the crux of your trauma just showing up again at this stage
And
in life. It never goes away for us, right? It always shows its head somewhere at some point.
Sure, that's why I say even when you think it's done,
Yeah,
it comes back again. And then I had this, reaction of just, I don't want to be a spectacle.
yeah.
I don't want for anybody. I don't want people looking at me. I don't want people acknowledging me. I want to be left alone, and that involved, it was that whole process was super triggering, like getting
Because
married.
then what if we say, well, what if I don't want you at the wedding and I just want the biological family? Then we will be looked at crazy.
So I said,
like, what? They would be like, what?
so I said, all right.
They
I said,
start
all
a
right,
firestorm.
I'm gonna go have a separate wedding in the bayou. And my mom
Let
said,
them not be invited in.
well, no, she goes, oh, can I come? And I said, no, you can't come.
Right? Like, how would you feel if I told you that you couldn't come, yet you're telling me that my biological family, like, ooh.
No, and then people at my wedding were asking me, oh, where's your family? I was so excited to meet them. I thought they'd be here. And I was like, please. Please.
All right, final question of the evening. What would real, and again, I believe we have been answering these questions, but what would real support and resources for birth parents and adoptees look like before, during, and after adoption? So what would the real support look like for birth parents and adoptees? What would those resources look like before, during, and after adoption? I think we've been, dibbling and dabbling in it throughout the whole entire conversation.
Mm.
Like I'll share too, when I did go on Capitol Hill, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. When I was on Capitol Hill, I did sit in on a panel discussion of women who were the mothers who gave up their children. So I was just saying that to say that to answer that question, it could be more like meetups, groups, getting together and just sharing in these open forums and just having more discussions and then connecting those resources.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you said that, I want to play a little bit of this clip. We're not going to play the whole thing because it's like 2 minutes long. But since this question came up about birth parents before, after, during the process, this is what Utah, and I want to show the amount that they were offering biological mothers to give their children up for adoption.
You gotta have a baby, or you're gonna have bills, and you're gonna have to pay this, and you're gonna have to pay that.
To present on adoption amendments. Please proceed.
Over the last few months, Utah legislators have heard concerns from birth mothers and advocates for adoption reform.
We were getting this bad reputation in the adoption space.
We've been pre-boarding passengers, meaning additional time our assistance, parents traveling with children.
Utah is referred to as the Wild West for adoption.
They say Utah's loose regulations had led the state to become a destination for adoption tourism.
The women will be brought in from Louisiana, South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, California.
1018, wind 190 at 6, runway 1 right, clear for takeoff.
Reform advocates say vulnerable women were being recruited to Utah from other states for the sole purpose of placing their babies for adoption in exchange for uncapped pregnancy-related financial support.
Uncapped pregnancy-related financial support. Let's see if they talk about the totals here.
Me giving birth to my baby was a transaction. As long as I had a baby and I don't leave, is what I was told.
Lakaya, a birth mother from Arkansas, shared documents with us showing the financial support she received while in Utah, including more than $18,000 for housing, telephone, and utilities, and $6,000 in postpartum expenses.
Now, if they can give that to you and you have to give your child up, why wouldn't they give you the money and you keep your child and be able to give your child what they need in your care?
Because that's logical.
Mm-hmm. And how many of these adoptions are
$6,000 for post like
You can't even get it out.
The exit. What is it? What? Do y'all see that?
KJ was just laughing like, what?
Like a total of $44,500 some odd dollars to give your child up to be adopted in Utah. That's why people were flying to Utah to become to place their children for adoption, because that was a
you're right. That money obviously didn't equate, right? So if they paid out $30,000 in totality and they're selling a child for 70, there's a 60% profit. So it's easier to give less to gain more in these cases, and sickening.
It is.
I just thought about that when you were talking, Kristen, you know, being as though, you know, there were mothers there who gave their children up for adoption, or their children were placed for adoption. And it's like, you know, if the resources were there, we would have had a lot better chances of keeping our children. If we would have known the things that, you know, you don't learn them until you go through them. And then if you don't have the support, you know, a lot of people don't know that you have your local counties that offer you housing and food vouchers and things that, like, young women, young girls are not educated on this, because for one, your parents are telling you not to, you know, have sex, not to bring no babies in the house, but they're not educating on you what if it happens? What if it happens? What if it happens? What are we going to do? What are you going to do? Because a lot of parents don't want to assume the responsibility of their children's kids.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, okay, so if this happens, is there a plan? Or as a parent knowing more than a child, is this something that you're letting your child know that, because there are some parents that, look, you can't live here with your child, and that's another issue. Another issue. You got to get out. You can't live here.
And how much of this is crisis? How much of this, that if they had the time to navigate it, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, can this adoption be preventable? Can the families remain together? Because even in private adoption, I think the stats are that 90% of mothers want to parent and can't because of lack of resources and crisis situations. You know?
No, they have drop-off boxes where you can go put the baby in the box and not, you know, and be anonymous, and nobody will ever know, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Even when my birth mother had me, she was told in the hospital in Louisiana, you know, don't hold the baby because you're going to want to keep the baby.
Wow.
So my grandma and my aunt, you know, they said they held me and they just took the baby, you know, from her. And it's like, when I think of myself at 19 or 20, which was the age of my mother, I just can't, you don't know up, down, you have to navigate that situation with people telling you everything, while also dealing with lack of resources or all of that. And then as far as potentially giving this money to the parents to attempt to parent and keep their families together, I feel as society would be like, well, say these people are, regardless of if they got the resources not equipped. If they were to get that money, I think society would say that's still not enough money to raise a child.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
the hands-on experience has to, you know, be there as well, and not just throwing money at them, but, you know, actually caring. I always say help is hard to find nowadays, and genuine help, because I don't know. I think COVID kind of did it, honestly, because after COVID, I don't think anybody is really genuinely trying to help nobody else. They're like, stay away, you know.
As far as reform, I'm not opposed to potentially seeing like adoptees being raised within the same state that they're from, instead of just being that way. They can just be like, because I'm from Louisiana, and I think, I mean, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm not opposed to that idea. If they can try that option first, I think they should exhaust a lot of options first that they probably don't.
Yeah. Leon, what about adoptees? What would real support and resources for adoptees look like during, before, during, and after adoption?
Counseling, being around people that come from the same experiences that you come from. I mean, they got groups for everything else, but for adoptees, like why are we the ones that are not cared for? Why are we the ones that they overlook when these minor details are required? They have groups for AA. They got all these different kinds of groups, and we were talking about the conferences. I never knew about any adoptee conferences until we came across a lady on Instagram, and she is actually running it. We were actually going to go to it, but she canceled it. It was for Black adoptees meetup.
Yeah.
And basically, it was just for people who were adopted to meet up, and just like Kristen was saying, have the panel discussions and just get to, try to build a community with the people that are actually adopted, and because I think that's necessary. And I think Precious always mentioned we should have, we should have free counseling for life.
And I think it's important, like, what type of counselor we are placed with, because I'm sure it's different now, and that counselors are becoming more educated in primal wounds and just adoption in general. But I don't know, as far as like in the 90s when I was in therapy.
I don't think there were probably that many adoption therapists then. There are more now.
Yes, I've seen them online.
There definitely are more now, and so
I've even thought like about going to one now, almost 40 years old. I'm like, maybe I should like.
No, I've gone to a Christian therapist, but I've never been to adoption centered therapist.
Yes.
I've never done that.
You know what's funny is that I have a therapist. I have been seeing for over a year, only to find out during one of our last sessions. I was telling him about my podcast. He was like, "Oh, I'm adopted." It's like, "Oh my God, my therapist is adopted." in the Maryland area too. And he is biracial as well.
Wow.
No, I'm not her doctor.
I did try to tell him, I'm like, "Can I share your story?" He's like, "Not yet, because I'm writing a book about it." I was like, "Okay, when your book comes out, I want you on my show."
On the couch.
But that's amazing. I didn't know. Again, I'm in therapy and we're not talking about adoption. And it just "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm adopted too." It's like, wow.
Okay, so you weren't there to talk about adoption, but
no, I was talking about work and life, and then that just came up one day. So
that's when we talk about resources for children that are adopted, before, during, and after, definitely that during and after. I don't know about an after. It's just before and during. There is no after adoption unless you get rehoused or replaced, or some people who are adopted more than once, which has to be traumatic all in itself as well.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, going from what you think is a forever home to you never going back home. So there's so many dynamics, so many different layers and levels to this.
Right, and there's so much change that can happen that would make this more ethical, instead of saying we want change and people coming back and saying, "Oh, well, would you rather been put into foster care?" No, of course not. Of course not.
I mean, if you would have asked me to be honest, I would have stayed at my last. No, I like transparency, right? Like, I'm just being honest. Adoption traumatized me because I loved it so much at my foster care home that being adopted traumatized me.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Away from the friends that I've created, my school, my activities, just being a kid, and then to go out again. I was 8, turning 9. I was a lot older than y'all, so I had a life.
Yeah.
Going from home to home to home. Actually, finally being in one that I loved and enjoyed, to then being taken out of that one So, you know, the act of adoption for me was traumatizing. My parents were great. I wish we would have talked about adoption a lot more growing up, and it would have been a welcoming conversation in our house, but it just wasn't, and it still isn't. But I just, you know, it just was a traumatic experience for me at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, all right. So, you have a question? Who was that?
Yes, I guess my question is when you're in foster care, do they give you say if you don't want to be adopted, or do you automatically are put into the system?
I was eligible. I was eligible for adoption. There was a picnic that we all went to one day, and I'm thinking it's another day with activities and food and you know, arts and crafts. And lo and behold, all these kids are at this picnic because we all needed to be adopted.
Oh my God.
My foster at the time was having her own child, and I think she probably told the foster agency, like, okay, I'm having my own biological child. I no longer want to be a foster home. I don't want to be considered for being children being placed here anymore. And that is, I think, with probably my parents looking, you know, it all works together at some point in time, right? So, you know, all of those things aligned. And like I said, I had no clue that the process was a process and that I was in the process. It didn't register to me whatsoever until I was gone, and I cried the entire way from where I was to where I went, and had to deal with it. So, you know, there definitely needs to be some type of reform and more even education, not just for adoptive parents, but even those who are like myself, who are in foster care, who were, you know, you're talking about the dynamics of your situation, and not from a caseworker just going to go visit kids and, you know, take them from one place to another or get them ice cream at McDonald's to make everything seem okay. You need to really talk to them too, because I didn't know I was a candidate for adoption. Like, I didn't know I was a candidate to be taken from, you know, one place to another and never come back. So I couldn't conceptualize that, you know. So things need to be in place too, because again, it was traumatic. It was just traumatic for me. All right. So we're going to get some interaction from those who are watching. Guys, thank you so much for being here, for watching, engaging. I know that there are some comments here that I saw. Coach Chelsea, thank you so much, my moderator. I like how Jessica is processing and explaining these impactful thoughts. And I like it too. I love your bravery. I love the fact that, you know, you can come on here and talk through what you're going through. Forced into building connections, but it's often one-sided. Yes, you know, sometimes it is one-sided, and we, as we get older and grow older, have to really come to some hard crossroads, right? Do we continue to force a relationship that was forced upon us, or do we take things as they are and live our lives and grow into who we are as people? You know, connect to the parts of ourselves that we were disconnected from.
And I think it's fine being in those circumstances as a grown-up to pick and choose where you want to be and where you feel comfortable, and in the places you don't, it's okay to take a break from it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. It's very important.
So thank you all who are on the panel. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you have. I hope that it has been, you know, some type of therapeutic for you. And, you know, leaving the panel, like we talked about, Kristen has gone to, you know, the conference and seen, you know, we should definitely do our due diligence in trying to figure out ways that we can impact the reform. We have 2 people in Maryland. You know, they just passed these laws, the Camilla, excuse me, law, and see how we can affect change. I'm definitely going to talk to my contact, Maria, who I've been working with on, you know, what exactly can we do to help this along?
Yeah.
How can our voices be heard just a little louder so those who don't understand can understand? They can't be empathetic towards us And we're not looking for any type of sympathy. We're looking for understanding. That's all. You know, we're looking for understanding. We're not victims. We're not people who are trying to look for any type of oohs and ahs, and no, just people who care to listen, to understand, and not to respond and be defensive.
Right.
So with that being said, guys, do you have any closing remarks before we get out of here and end it for the evening?
I just want to say thank you all. Thanks for the invitation. It's nice to have met Jessica and KJ and Leon. And I'm just looking forward to us continuing to communicate and stay together. This was really good. And it was healing for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Every time I come up here, it's healing.
Every conversation.
Yeah. And I think, for anybody going through this who does want to share their story, like everybody said, it doesn't make you a victim just because what you are sharing happens to be truth. Even if it's hard for other people to hear, even if it's sometimes unwanted, or some people may not understand. It's truth. That's it.
Yeah. And, we have to be comfortable in our truth. And sometimes that comes with misunderstanding on our end as well, because we don't have all the information. We don't quite know. We're eager to learn. We're very curious. And so I would say for adoptees to, give yourself grace, give yourself times where you are taking deep breaths in and deep breaths out, and understanding that you have one life to live and you can't please everyone in it.
Yeah.
But you do have to learn how to love yourself enough to be real with yourself so you can be real with others. And that starts with saying the uncomfortable things out loud to free yourself, even if it doesn't free others.
Yes.
Yeah.
To be able to free yourself. Everyone is responsible for freeing themselves. And I always say only Jesus saves. It is not my job to save anyone. I can provide a platform. I can hold space for our stories, but I can't save anyone. The only person that I am responsible for is myself and my daughter. And until she gets to an age where she, is fully responsible for herself. And as a parent, I can't stifle her truth, and I wouldn't want to stifle her truth. And so adoptees, give yourself grace. Adoptive parents, become curious. Get off the fence. No one should be on the fence. Get off the fence so everyone can have a civil conversation, so you can come to understanding. Because honestly, adoptees want connection. We just don't want connection with secrecy, because then there is no connection. Not the connection that is well-rounded for everyone. It may be connection for an adoptive parent who's looking to be a parent, but for those who don't have any say in the matter, the adoptees, we won't find connection if secrecy is still, in the heart of adoption and adoption journeys. So let's all love each other and learn and understand and get further in this journey together. So again, I appreciate you guys. Until next time, guys, we're here every Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern. Definitely hit that like button if you're part of the replay gang. We appreciate you. Thank you for staying this long. Join us next week. Tomorrow we will be live 9 p.m. for the men's forum on the Real Precious Network right here. So look out for the post for that, because I'll post that tomorrow. But again, thank you guys for joining us here at the Adoptee Foster Show, where we say the uncomfortable things out loud.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys for joining us, and I hope you come back soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.